We are here with Randy Beane. You are the president of the Dayton F.O.P, Fraternal Order of Police, and that's essentially the union president for the Dayton City Police Department.
Yes, it is.
Okay. I wanted to talk to you about hiring. It's been a big subject in the news. Where are we at right now? How do you feel the whole process? You know, from a union, you deal with these things every day. The small print in the contracts, all of the politics surrounding the issue. Just where are we at, and where do you think we need to be?
Where we're at right now is the eligibility list for a police recruit. It was just released. We were going to try to have a class this year. I've been told that the class will be postponed for about 2 more months into the following year. So we look to have a class sometime around March. Initially it was supposed to be 25 police officers. That's been scaled back to 20. There may be another class after that. We're at an all-time low of police officers in the city of Dayton. We're currently at 348 total staff. That includes command. That's an unsafe number.
Do you think, just not to interrupt, but probably a question, do you think people who really have nefarious ideas and plans, know that?
I'm not sure if they know it or not. Certainly they realize that, we're used to, we'd have several police officers showing up. No longer we have that. There are situations where we have large-scale disturbances where, quite frankly, it's a safety issue for the officers and the citizens there, because it takes several districts and sometimes even the whole city to respond to one incident to bring it under control.
What kind of incident would you be talking about? Like a
large-scale
fight,
disturbance,
drama,
shots fired incident. We have several of those where we have the entire city responding. Certainly that leaves those other parts of the city uncovered. We have that very frequently. A lot of times you don't hear about it in the media, but it does occur. 348 people now compared to at one point 517. Certainly is a huge drop. We had more police officers back in 1961 than what we have now. You might say that population was greater then. However, certainly the crime, the gangs, the mandates on reporting are certainly different than what they were in 1961. So staffing is critical. As far as the process of how we've done this test, it's been totally flawed from day one. The DOJ, that whole situation, I certainly disagree that our test was biased. It did have a disparate impact, but the whole reality is here, we aren't getting enough African Americans to the testing site. And nobody seems to want to listen to that. What I've advocated for many years is that we have to break down the barriers between police and minority community. Those barriers, either real or perceived, are there. And the only way you're going to do that is to get into the schools at a very young age and start working with the youth, mentoring them, keeping them interested in becoming police and firefighters. Absent that, you're going to have the same results time in and time out.
What do you think has caused, I mean, it's a subject of probably books and theses, has since the, I guess probably the 70s, when Nixon really, when the U.S. government started the big drug war and the incarceration of African Americans, spiraled up. Has that caused, problems in dealing with minority communities or communities that aren't of the what's the word I'm looking for? The majority culture?
Well, certainly when the only contact that a young African American may have had with the police is when we have been there for a situation where we then arrest a loved one or something of that nature. Certainly that doesn't enhance a positive image of the police per se. So we have to get to the community that we do a whole lot more than just that. And absent that, we're going to have the same results.
Do you think a lot of that has to do with, the only thing, one of the things we've kind of strived to do is show news that's not in the news, but the mainstream news, really, if a lot of times I've joked with friends, if you watch the news, you think it's Columbine around here every day, but you walk around the streets, obviously, there's the complete difference in reality, in perception and reality.
Well, first of all, Dayton is one of the most violent cities in the nation. At one point, we were ranked as high as 7th most violent. So we need to deal with that on one hand. On the other hand, there are a lot more positive things that police do other than responding to cuttings and shootings. Now, a lot of those things aren't exactly glorious or sensational. And it's the fault of the media. I mean, the media is in business, and sensationalism attracts viewers, it attracts readers to the newspaper, whereas a story about the police putting on a benefit for underprivileged kids at Christmas time may not be as glamorous, and people may not want to read about that. So I don't hold this against the media at all. They're doing a job. I have no problems whatsoever with the media. A lot of times police officers are very fearful or do not like to deal with the media. I look at it entirely different. They have a job to do, we have a job to do. So I don't hold that against them at all, their reporting. But you're right. The perception may be that that's all there is out there is violence, and that's not necessarily true.
Yeah, because when you think of it just numbers-wise, if there's a violent act in a day in the city of Dayton, there's also over 100,000 people who weren't involved in a violent act, or certainly not to diminish the violent act, but to put it in perspective, it's much more dangerous driving your car anywhere than walking the streets.
Yes, the thing is that we need to deal with the violence in our community. Certainly violence has inhibited economic development in our area. What businesses want to come into our area when they have done their homework and they find out about the violence. Although Dayton Public Schools has made tremendous strides in schools, it's still not a premier school system. So absent strong public safety in your community, a strong school system, economic development will be inhibited. Certainly Dayton has all the ingredients for a successful city. Our infrastructure, they've been working on it quite a bit. The bridges, the roadways. We have land, we have location, and we have an ingredient that nobody can replicate. And we have all the water that any company could want.
We have a lot of natural beauty in the city too. I think a lot of people, there was a lot of kind of classical European design that went into the city, back in the period when they were designing cities like that.
Most assuredly, we have a wide array of housing. If you, whatever your tastes are, I think we have it. Now, we have all the ingredients for a successful city. We just need to find the chef that knows how to put the certain ingredients together. And I think that we could be a successful city. Right now, we are not. Right now, we are so much like other urban cities where we're decaying, where we're certainly losing out to the suburbs. And I'm not sure, if the chef needs to be a strong mayor. I'm not sure what the fix is at this point.
As far as hiring goes, when you talked about, the city of Dayton's not necessarily been successful at this point in time, do you worry about with more and more cuts coming into place, city budget cuts? I was at a meeting last night where they're talking about cutting from different programs in the city, like community development board. It's obviously not the police, but do you worry that it's going to get to a point where it becomes a spiral down, a flushing type, a snowball effect, if you will, where, at a certain point, you can't cut unless you just want to make someplace a third world shanty.
Well, first of all, we need to look at what has caused this, okay? And the local government fund to cut in that means that the city of Dayton will receive around $9.2 million less over the next year and a half. The city has been somewhat successful in their cuts and keeping their expenditures below what they need to be. But this $9.2 million that's resulted loss of revenue, we need to look at what our legislators in Columbus are doing. They, in essence, are killing the cities. Their actions here, cutting the local government fund at such a great proportion right away, is killing the cities. Dayton will be just like several other cities. You'll see it all around the state. Citizens should be outraged. Now, did there need to be a cut in the local government fund? That's debatable. But you certainly don't cut it at the rate that they cut immediately. There are no tools in the toolbox, as the governor would indicate, that will give the local governments the ability to control their budgets better. That's a fallacy, and I'm being kind with the word fallacy. So first of all, we need to look at that. Secondly, we need to look at, it's kind of an oxymoron, that the city has done very well with keeping their expenditures below budget. They've been very well at getting the low-hanging fruit in revenues. In fact, our revenues are up, income tax collections are up, investment earnings are up. But the dilemma here is that we're probably going to sustain cuts in police and fire at one point. Certainly my brothers in the fire union, they were already talking about browning out a couple pieces of apparatus. To me, that's unacceptable. And it's unacceptable in that that puts the city's citizens at risk. The number one component is public safety. Now in the police department, we have had cuts like everybody else. But yet, on the other hand, our administration has increased. We have more majors now in this organization than we've ever had. We have more command in this organization than we ever had. Labor Relations 101 will tell you that you don't make cuts to the rank and file and then increase your administration. You want to cause discord, that certainly will do it. So that's why I'm not quite sure why the city is doing this. They've been so good on one hand and so bad on another. So I'm not sure on which day they're making these decisions. Same way in the fire department. Command is top heavy. If you want the rank and file to take cuts, you need to lead by example and make cuts at the top as well. But certainly I believe the number one thing in the city of Dayton is public safety. Your economic development hinges upon public safety. Everything pivots around public safety. Certainly I think your number two department in the city should be your economic development department. We should be actively going out looking for companies to come to Dayton. Again, we have land, location, and water. Not too many people have that, especially water. So I would hope that we would focus on those two areas. Public safety, number one. You got to have a strong public safety to attract business, and number two, you got to actually go out and get the business.
Yeah, and plus, like I said, with the public safety, high-profile incidents can ruin a neighborhood and or a business district. I mean, incidents, we've had 2 robberies recently in the Oregon district, and does this ever come around to a point where you talked about state budget cuts, and at the same time we're in our country's pumping trillions of dollars into you might consider it more than one war overseas,